Growing up in a family of restaurateurs, I quickly learned that food was more than just nourishment. It was an art form, a legacy, and a powerful way to bring people together. My grandmother's small noodle shop in Chinatown had sustained our family for 3 generations. Watching her expertly craft dishes in the tiny kitchen shaped my understanding of the world. "Remember, May," she'd say, her hands skillfully folding dumplings. "Good food comes from the heart, not just the ingredients." I'd internalized those words, spending countless hours in the kitchen, absorbing not only recipes but the business wisdom that had helped our family navigate tough times. What no one knew was that I was also pursuing an online MBA, studying late into the night after the restaurant had closed. During the day, I mastered the delicate balance of flavors and the importance of fresh ingredients. At night, I delved into market analysis, business strategy, and corporate finance. My ambition extended beyond running a restaurant. I aimed to revolutionize the food industry. Then, I met James. He walked into our restaurant one rainy Tuesday evening, seeking refuge from the storm. Tall, impeccably dressed, and distinctly out of place, he immediately caught my attention. "What would you recommend?" he asked, water dripping from his expensive coat. "Our hand-pulled noodles with braised beef," I replied without hesitation. "It's perfect for a night like this." He smiled, a smile that made my heart skip a beat. "I trust your judgment." 20 minutes later, I watched as he took his first bite. His eyes widened in surprise, then closed in delight. When they opened again, they locked onto mine. "This is incredible," he said. "I've never tasted anything like it." That moment marked the beginning of our story. James became a regular, visiting 3 times a week, always trying something new. Our conversations began with food but quickly expanded to everything else. He worked in finance at a major investment firm, while I shared stories about the restaurant, carefully omitting my MBA and larger ambitions. 6 months later, he proposed, simple and intimate, just us in the restaurant after closing, over a bowl of the noodles he first tasted. Meeting his family was a different story. The Chens were old money, with a business empire encompassing restaurants, hotels, and real estate. James's father, Richard Chen, was CEO of Chen Global Hospitality, one of Asia's largest luxury hotel and restaurant groups. His mother, Victoria, embodied old-world elegance, while his sister, Amanda, was the company's director of operations. From the start, it was clear I didn't fit their ideal image of a daughter-in-law. A small restaurant? Victoria's perfectly manicured eyebrows arched during our first meeting. How quaint. Amanda's disdain was more overt. "James, you can't be serious. We're Chens. We own restaurant chains, not street food stalls." James squeezed my hand under the table but remained silent, a red flag I chose to overlook. The engagement dinner was a subtle exercise in humiliation. Held at the Chen's flagship restaurant, the Imperial Palace, it was clear they viewed me as an outsider. "May, dear," Victoria called across the table. "It's fascinating that you work in food service. Do you cook everything yourself, or do you have actual chefs?" Before I could respond, Amanda added, "Mother, be kind. I'm sure she does her best with what she has. Not everyone can afford proper culinary training." Drawing on years of customer service experience, I maintained my composure. "I trained under my grandmother." "Whoa. Oh, how sweet," Victoria interrupted. "Family recipes. James, remember our cooking class in Paris with the Michelin-starred chef?" James chuckled uncomfortably. "Mother, please." But the most painful part wasn't their condescension. It was James's silence. He never once defended me or our relationship. What they didn't know was that, while managing my tiny restaurant, I had completed my MBA with honors and developed an AI-driven food service platform poised to revolutionize the industry. My company, Food Tech Solutions, was already valued at over $3 billion, operating in stealth mode. I had kept this private, wanting to be judged for who I was, not what I owned. But as wedding preparations began, it became clear that the Chens would never accept me. The breaking point came during a family dinner at Victoria's mansion. I brought some of my signature dishes to share my heritage. Victoria wrinkled her nose at the containers. "Oh, he brought takeout." "Actually, I made these myself," I said proudly. "They're my grandmother's recipes." Amanda prodded the food with her fork. "How authentic. But for the wedding, we should stick to proper catering. We have a reputation to maintain." James, beside me, focused intently on his phone. The wedding menu is settled, Victoria announced. Chef Pierre from Paris will cater. We can have street food at a Chen wedding. My food isn't. I began, but Victoria raised a hand. May, dear, understand that the Chens are more than a family. We're a brand. Your little restaurant is charming, but it's not up to our standards. After the wedding, we could help you find a more suitable occupation. My phone buzzed. It was an alert. Chen Global Hospitality's stock had plummeted 30% in after-hours trading due to leaked quarterly losses and potential fraud in their restaurant division. Victoria turned ashen. Amanda frantically typed, and Richard barked orders into his phone. James turned to me, pale. I need to go to the office. Family emergency. I stood calmly. Actually, I think I can help. Everyone froze. Help? Amanda sneered, though her voice wavered. Unless you can conjure $500 million, your noodle expertise isn't relevant. I pulled my laptop from my bag. Actually, I'd like to show you something. Victoria waved a dismissive hand. May, dear, this is hardly the time for food tech solutions, I interjected calmly, turning my laptop around to face them. Have you heard of it? The color drained from Amanda's face. Of course she had. Every major player in the hospitality industry knew about the enigmatic tech company revolutionizing restaurant operations worldwide. Richard lowered his phone, eyes narrowing. What about it? I founded it 3 years ago, I said simply. It's currently valued at $3.2 billion. And yes, Amanda, I can produce that $500 million you need, and more. A heavy silence fell over the room. James gaped at me. But you run a small restaurant. I run several things, James. The restaurant is my passion. Food tech solutions is where my business acumen thrives. I turned to Victoria. Those street food recipes you mocked are the foundation of an AI-driven menu optimization system now used by 5-star restaurants worldwide. Richard leaned forward, his earlier disdain replaced by keen interest. You're saying you're the CEO of Food Tech Solutions, the company every hospitality group is chasing. The same, I confirmed, pulling up our financials. We're in stealth mode but plan to go public next quarter. Our AI platform revolutionizes everything from inventory management to customer preference prediction. Something your company desperately needs right now. I gestured to Amanda's laptop, showing their dismal financial report. Victoria's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. But why didn't you tell us? She asked, voice faltering. Would it have made a difference? I asked softly. Would it have made me more worthy of respect? More suitable as a daughter-in-law? The fact that you're even asking speaks volumes. Amanda's face reddened with anger. You expect us to believe you, a restaurant owner, built a billion-dollar tech company in secret? I displayed a screen of patents and proprietary algorithms. Your crisis stems from outdated systems and manual inventory management. These are exactly the issues my technology solves. Richard's business instincts flared. We should discuss this privately, perhaps over dinner at the Imperial. No, I cut in. We'll discuss it here, where you've belittled me for months. You've made it clear I'm not good enough for your family. James finally spoke. May, why didn't you tell me? I looked at him, a profound sadness settling in. I wanted you to stand up for me for who I am, not for what I own. But you never did. Victoria tried to recover. Darling, you must understand. We have standards. Yes, you've made those standards clear, I said firmly. Now let me set mine. Chen Global Hospitality is on the brink of collapse. I can help, but there will be conditions. Amanda's eyes darkened. Conditions? This is blackmail. No, Amanda, this is business. I stood smoothing my dress. You've treated me like I'm beneath you. Now you need my help. Can your pride handle that? Richard's tone turned conciliatory. Name your conditions. First, a complete reorganization of your management. Your leadership is incompetent. I glanced at Amanda, who sputtered indignantly. Second, full implementation of Food Tech Solutions systems across all properties. Your outdated methods are bleeding money. Third, I continued, a public acknowledgement of our partnership and the fact that I, owner of that little restaurant, saved Chen Global Hospitality. Victoria gasped. You can't expect us to. I can. Your stock is in free fall. By morning, you'll have lost half your market value. Your investors are already calling for heads to roll. James reached for my hand. May, please, let's talk. I pulled away. We need to discuss our relationship, James. The room grew silent again. You've let your family insult me, my heritage, and my work for months. You've laughed with them, sat quietly, and never stood up for me. Even tonight, your first instinct was to flee to the office instead of defending me. Tears welled in my eyes, but my voice stayed steady. I don't need a partner who only values me for my wealth. I need someone who would defend me when I had nothing. Victoria rose, her composure slipping. Now see here. No, you see here. I cut her off. I hope to be accepted for who I am. Instead, you've shown me who you are. Accept my terms and save your company, or let your pride destroy it. I gathered my things, including the untouched containers of my street food. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. My team will be in touch. As I walked to the door, Amanda called out, "You can't just walk away. This is our legacy." I turned one last time. Yes, and you've run it into the ground. If you had focused on innovation instead of judgment, you wouldn't be here. The last thing I saw was James's stricken face, Victoria's trembling hands, and Richard's calculating stare. Their empire was crumbling, and their only hope lay in the woman they had deemed unworthy. Sometimes, karma wears a business suit and carries recipes in takeout containers. The next morning, in my sleek penthouse office overlooking the city, I reviewed our latest AI data. My phone buzzed incessantly. Messages from James, Richard's lawyers, and finally, Victoria herself. My assistant, Sarah, entered with a fresh cup of green tea. The Chen family is in the lobby. All of them. I checked my watch. 7:30 a.m., right on schedule. Give them 10 minutes, then send them up. Those 10 minutes mattered. A negotiation lesson from my grandmother. Let them wait, she'd say. Anxiety seasons any dish. When they finally entered my office, their transformation was stark. Victoria's aristocratic poise had crumbled, Amanda's designer outfit seemed hastily thrown together, and Richard's face wore the strain of a sleepless night. James lingered at the back, looking utterly lost. The paperwork is ready, I said without preamble, gesturing toward the documents on the conference table. Shall we begin? Richard stepped forward. Before we start, I want to say. Save it, I interrupted. This is a business meeting, nothing more. Your company is hemorrhaging value by the minute. Let's focus on that. For the next 2 hours, we methodically went through the terms. Food Tech Solutions would acquire a 40% stake in Chang Global Hospitality in exchange for emergency funding and the full implementation of our systems. Amanda would step down as Director of Operations, to be replaced by someone from my team. This is highway robbery, Amanda sputtered, but Richard silenced her with a glare. It's more than fair, I replied calmly. You're getting cutting-edge technology, immediate financial stability, and a partnership that will elevate your market value. In return, I gained partial ownership of a company in desperate need of modernization. Victoria, who had remained unusually quiet, finally spoke. And what about James? I met her gaze steadily. James is not part of this discussion. Business and personal matters should remain separate, something your family never seemed to grasp. James stepped forward. May, please. Can we talk privately? I considered for a moment before nodding. 5 minutes. The rest of you can review the documents with my legal team. In my private office, James paced nervously. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? Would it have changed anything? I asked. Would you have stood up to your family sooner? Defended my little restaurant against their constant criticism? I was trying to keep the peace. No, James. You were choosing the path of least resistance. Each time your family insulted me, my heritage, my work, you chose silence. That silence said everything. He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. I love you, May. Isn't that enough? Love without respect isn't love, James. It's convenience. I stood up. Your family's company is in crisis because they refuse to adapt, to see value in different perspectives. You're not so different. Give me another chance, he pleaded. Now that I understand. That's the problem. I cut in. You only want another chance because now you know I'm wealthy and successful. But I'm the same person I was yesterday, running my little restaurant with pride. If you couldn't love and respect that person, you don't deserve to know this one. Back in the conference room, the documents were ready for signing. Richard's hand trembled slightly as he signed away 40% of his family's legacy. Victoria watched with tears in her eyes, while Amanda sat stiffly, barely containing her fury. As the papers were notarized, I made one final announcement. One more thing. My grandmother's restaurant, it's not for sale at any price. It will continue operating exactly as it has for 3 generations. But surely with your resources, Victoria began. That restaurant is my heritage, my heart. It's everything you looked down on, everything you mocked. And it will remain exactly as it is, a reminder that success doesn't always wear a designer label or come with a luxury brand name. Over the next 6 months, Chen Global Hospitality underwent a complete transformation. Our AI systems revolutionized their operations, cutting costs while improving service quality. Their stock not only recovered but soared to new heights. The press loved the story. A traditional family business saved by innovative technology from an unexpected source. James sent flowers, letters, even tried to visit the restaurant. I returned the flowers, left the letters unopened, and had security politely escort him out. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. 1 year later, I sat in my grandmother's kitchen, showing her the latest financial reports. Chen Global Hospitality had doubled in value, and Food Tech Solutions was now worth over $5 billion. "Ah, but how's the broth?" she asked, tasting the day's soup. I smiled, understanding her point. Success wasn't about the numbers, it was about staying true to yourself, your values, your heritage. The restaurant was packed as usual, with a line stretching around the block. Victoria had come by once, months ago, presumably to make amends. She waited in line like everyone else, ate quietly in a corner, and left a generous tip. She never returned, but the gesture was noted. Amanda had moved to Europe, unable to face the humiliation of working under my management team. Richard adapted surprisingly well, finally acknowledging that tradition needed to walk hand in hand with innovation. And James, last I heard, he was dating a socialite his mother approved of. Some people never learn. As for me, I split my time between running a global tech company and making noodles in my grandmother's kitchen. Both brought me joy in different ways, both were equally important parts of who I am. The media often asked about the contrast, a billionaire tech CEO who still works in a small restaurant kitchen. They didn't understand that the restaurant wasn't just a business, it was a reminder of where I came from, who I am, and what truly matters. One evening, as I was closing up the restaurant, a young girl peeked into the kitchen. "Are you really the lady who owns all those big hotels now?" I smiled, handing her a freshly made dumpling. "No, sweetheart. I'm just the lady who makes really good noodles. Everything else is just business." The Chen family thought they were teaching me a lesson about status and worth. Instead, they learned a costly lesson about judgment and pride. Sometimes the most valuable things in life come in the simplest packages, and the most powerful people are those who don't need to prove their power. As my grandmother always said, good food comes from the heart, not just the ingredients. The same is true of success. It comes from integrity, not just assets. I still have the takeout containers from that last dinner at the Chen mansion. They sit in my office as a reminder. Never let anyone shame you for who you are, and never compromise your values for those who can't see your worth. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't serving a cold dish, it's serving a perfectly prepared one. Seasoned with success, garnished with grace, and served with a side of karmic justice.
The aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie filled my aunt's expansive dining room, but all I could taste was bitterness. I sat at the far end of the table watching my family's annual Thanksgiving performance of success and superiority. So then, my cousin Anthony was saying, swirling his expensive wine, "I told the board we needed to think bigger. That's how I landed the Morgan account. 200 million in new business just like that." He snapped his fingers, drawing appreciative murmurs from our assembled relatives. "That's my boy," Uncle Peter beamed. Following in my footsteps, taking Harrison Financial to new heights. I pushed my food around my plate trying to become invisible. But of course that was impossible. In my family, if you weren't actively bragging about your latest achievement, someone would helpfully point out your failures. "And what about you, Sophia?" Aunt Diana's voice dripped with false concern. "Still doing that. What do you call it? Consulting." All eyes turned to me. I straightened in my chair, keeping my voice steady. Yes, my firm is doing well, thank you. Anthony snorted into his wine glass. Firm? Don't you work out of your apartment? That's hardly what I'd call a firm. Now, my mother interjected, though her tone suggested she agreed with him. Sophia is finding my way. That's what they'd been saying for 3 years, ever since I left my prestigious position at Harrison Financial to start my own company. They couldn't understand why anyone would walk away from the family business, much less strike out on their own. Speaking of finding ways, Anthony continued, his smile sharp as a knife. Did you hear about our upcoming merger? Harrison Financial is about to acquire Summit Solutions. It's the biggest deal in the company's history. More impressed murmurs. More congratulatory nods. My uncle practically glowed with pride. The paperwork goes through next week, Anthony added. Once it's final, we'll be the largest financial services provider in the Northeast. I took a small sip of water, thinking about the documents sitting on my desk downtown. Documents that could shatter their perfect plans. Of course, my aunt said, some people prefer to stay small. There's nothing wrong with that, is there, Sophia? Nothing at all, I replied quietly. Sometimes small is exactly where you need to be. Anthony laughed outright. Small? Try microscopic. Honestly, Sophia, when are you going to admit that this little experiment of yours failed? Come back to Harrison Financial. I'm sure we can find you something appropriate to your skills. The way he said appropriate made it clear he was thinking of the mailroom. Thank you, but I'm happy where I am. Happy? My uncle scoffed. You can't be happy being a nobody. The Harrisons are leaders, innovators. Look at Anthony, youngest vice president in company history, about to close the biggest merger we've ever seen. That's what success looks like. I thought about the merger they were so proud of. About the hours I'd spent reviewing the details, finding the flaws, preparing my response. They had no idea that their perfect deal required my signature to go through. Actually, I started, but my mother cut me off. Sophia, darling, maybe it's time to be practical. Your father and I worry about you rattling around in that tiny office, playing at being a businesswoman. I'm not playing at anything, Mom. Oh, come on, Anthony interjected. Your largest client is a local bakery. Meanwhile, I'm handling accounts worth hundreds of millions. Face it, cousin, you're out of your league. My phone buzzed quietly in my lap. A message from my assistant. Final merger documents arrived. Your signature required as regulatory compliance officer. Harrison Financial has no idea it's you. I allowed myself a small smile. 3 years ago, when I left Harrison Financial, I hadn't just started my own consulting firm. I'd also begun building something much bigger. A compliance and regulatory oversight company that now held approval power over major financial mergers. Through careful maneuvering in shell companies, I'd positioned myself as the key signature needed for any major financial acquisition in the Northeast. Harrison Financial's big merger? It wouldn't happen without my approval. And they had no idea. Poor Sophia, my cousin Amanda Stage whispered to Anthony. Still a nobody after all this time. Remember when she thought she could do better than us? I stood up suddenly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Excuse me, I need some air. Running away again? Anthony called after me. That's all you're good at. I stepped onto the back porch, breathing in the crisp November air. My phone buzzed again, another message from my assistant. Harrison Financial's lawyers are getting nervous. They need the compliance signature by Monday or the deal falls apart. Let them wait, I typed back. I'll handle it personally on Monday. Through the window I could hear my family still discussing my failures. How I'd thrown away a promising career. How I'd embarrassed the family name. How I'd never amount to anything. If only they knew that their precious merger, their crowning achievement, rested entirely in my hands. My uncle's voice carried through the glass. That's the problem with Sophia. No ambition, no drive. Not like Anthony. He understands what it means to be a Harrison. I leaned against the porch railing, remembering the day I'd walked away from Harrison Financial. I'd tried to warn them about their outdated practices, their regulatory vulnerabilities. But they wouldn't listen. Anthony had laughed in my face. What do you know about running a real business? So I'd left, taking my knowledge and experience with me. While they were busy mocking my tiny consulting firm, I was quietly building a regulatory empire. Every major financial merger in the Northeast now required approval from Phoenix Compliance Group, my company. My phone lit up with another message, this time from the regulatory board. Harrison Financial merger requires immediate attention. Significant compliance issues identified. I smiled, thinking about Monday morning's meeting. About walking into that boardroom not as failed cousin Sophia, but as the CEO whose signature they desperately needed. Through the window, I could see Anthony holding court at the dinner table, probably sharing another story of his corporate brilliance. He had no idea that his moment of triumph was about to become something very different. Sophia. My mother's voice startled me. She'd stepped onto the porch, wrapped in her designer shawl. Don't you think you've hidden out here long enough? Your cousin is about to announce something important. Let me guess, more details about the magnificent merger? She frowned at my tone. You could learn a lot from Anthony's success, you know. Instead of being jealous, why not observe how a real business person operates? I bit back a laugh. I think I understand business pretty well, Mom. Filing paperwork for a bakery is hardly the same as handling multi-million-dollar mergers, she sniffed. Please just come back inside and try to be supportive. And do something about that attitude, it's not attractive. I followed her back into the dining room, where Anthony was indeed preparing to make an announcement. He stood, tapping his crystal wine glass with a silver spoon. Everyone, I have something special to share, he began, his chest puffing with pride. As you know, the Summit Solutions merger is a game-changer for Harrison Financial. What you don't know is that upon its completion, I'll be named the youngest chief operating officer in company history. The room erupted in applause. My aunt dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. My uncle beamed like he'd personally hung the moon. To Anthony, someone called out, "The future of Harrison Financial." I raised my water glass along with everyone else, hiding my smile behind the rim. "Oh, Anthony, your future isn't quite as secure as you think." Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that only comes after a storm. I stood in my real office, not the small consulting space my family knew about, but the entire top floor of the Phoenix building downtown, and prepared for the meeting that would change everything. Harrison Financial's representatives are already in the conference room, my assistant informed me. Your cousin seems rather anxious. I smiled, adjusting my tailored blazer. 3 years of being the family failure. I think I can let him sweat for a few more minutes. I reviewed the merger documents one last time, noting all the compliance issues I'd flagged. Issues that Anthony, in his rush to claim glory, had completely overlooked. The same issues I'd tried to warn them about before leaving Harrison Financial. Ms. Montgomery? My assistant appeared again. They're getting quite agitated. Mr. Harrison keeps demanding to know why the compliance officer is late. Tell them she'll be right in. I gathered my files and walked slowly toward the conference room, remembering Anthony's words from Thanksgiving. Poor Sophia, still a nobody. Well, cousin, let's see who's a nobody now. Through the glass walls, I could see Anthony pacing, his perfectly styled hair slightly disheveled. My uncle sat at the head of the table, attempting to maintain his dignified facade but failing to hide his nervousness. The Summit Solutions executives looked increasingly uncomfortable. I pushed open the door. The reaction was immediate. Anthony froze mid-stride. My uncle's face went from red to white in seconds. The Summit Solutions CEO actually dropped his pen. What are you doing here? Anthony sputtered. This is a private meeting. I know. I walked calmly to the head of the table. I'm the compliance officer you've been waiting for. Silence. Complete absolute silence. That's impossible, my uncle finally managed. The compliance officer is from Phoenix Compliance Group. They're the largest regulatory body in the Northeast. Yes, they are. I sat down, arranging my papers neatly. And I'm their CEO and founder. Anthony collapsed into his chair. No, you run that little consulting firm. You handle paperwork for bakeries. Oh, I do that too. It's amazing how much you can learn about regulatory compliance from small businesses. I smiled. But Phoenix Compliance Group? That's my real company. The one you were too busy mocking me to notice. The Summit Solutions CEO leaned forward. Ms. Montgomery, I don't understand. Why didn't you disclose this connection earlier? because until now there was nothing to disclose. I've recused myself from all Harrison financial matters due to family connections. I pulled out the compliance report. But this merger? The irregularities are too significant to ignore. Irregularities. My uncle's voice cracked. What irregularities? I began listing them off. Undisclosed liabilities. Questionable accounting practices. Labor law violations. And that's just the beginning. I looked directly at Anthony. The same issues I warned you about 3 years ago, cousin. The ones you said I was too inexperienced to understand. Anthony's face had taken on a greenish tint. This is a vendetta. You're just angry because we didn't appreciate your what? My expertise. My understanding of regulatory compliance? My ability to build something bigger than you could imagine. I spread the documents across the table. Every issue in this report is meticulously documented. Your merger can't proceed without addressing them. You can't do this, my uncle exploded. We're family. Family. I laughed softly. Was it family when you mocked my career choices? When you called me a failure at every holiday? When you dismissed every attempt I made to help your company improve? The Summit Solutions executives were gathering their papers. Perhaps we should postpone this discussion. No. Anthony lunged forward. This merger has to happen. My promotion, my future. Should have been based on competence rather than arrogance, I finished for him. I'm not blocking the merger, Anthony. I'm requiring you to fix the problems. Problems I identified 3 years ago before they became critical. My uncle's lawyer cleared his throat. Ms. Montgomery, surely we can come to some arrangement. The only arrangement I'm interested in is full compliance with regulatory requirements. I stood up. You have 48 hours to address these issues, or I'll be forced to file a formal objection to the merger. 48 hours? Anthony's voice rose to a squeak. That's impossible. Not impossible. Just difficult. Perhaps you should spend less time bragging at family dinners and more time doing your actual job. As the room erupted in chaos, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Why is your uncle calling me in a panic? What have you done? I typed back. Ask Anthony. I'm sure he'd love to explain how his nobody cousin now controls his future. The Summit Solutions team was already leaving, their enthusiasm for the merger clearly dampened. My uncle sat slumped in his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. And Anthony just stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. How? He whispered. How did you build all this without us knowing? Because you didn't want to know, I replied simply. You were so convinced of my failure that you never bothered to look beyond the surface. Every time you mocked my little consulting firm, I was building something bigger. Every time you dismissed my concerns about compliance, I was proving them right. But at Thanksgiving you let us think. I let you think what you wanted to think, just like I've been doing for 3 years. I gathered my papers. By the way, that bakery client you laughed about, they're now a national chain, fully compliant with all regulatory requirements. Because sometimes, cousin, the people you dismiss as nobodies are actually changing the world while you're busy talking about changing it. The next 48 hours were exactly what you'd expect. My family alternated between fury and desperate attempts at reconciliation. My mother left tearful voicemails about family loyalty. My aunt tried to persuade me that Anthony had learned his lesson. I responded to all of them the same way. Fix the compliance issues or the merger fails. They fixed them. They had no choice. Harrison Financial's stock had already taken a hit just from the delay, and Anthony's perfect reputation was showing serious cracks. The merger eventually went through, though on vastly different terms than Anthony had originally planned. He didn't get his COO position. Instead, the board insisted on appointing a new compliance officer, someone who actually understood regulatory requirements rather than just talking about them. My uncle retired 6 months later, citing health concerns. In reality, the board had pushed him out, having finally realized how many issues he'd overlooked over the years. I continued building my empire, expanding Phoenix compliance group's reach beyond the Northeast. These days, when I attend family gatherings, which is rare, no one calls me a nobody. They don't call me anything at all. They just watch quietly, probably wondering what other surprises I'm hiding. Last week, I received an invitation to Anthony's holiday party. The note attached was clearly written under duress. I hope you can attend. Your expertise would be valuable to our discussions. I sent back my regrets. I was too busy running my multi-billion-dollar company to attend. Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right so definitively that they have no choice but to face their own failures. The small consulting office downtown? I kept it. It reminds me of where I started and why. Every morning I stop there before heading to my real office. I help small businesses navigate regulations, build sustainable practices, and grow. Because sometimes the biggest victories come from the smallest beginnings. And sometimes the person they dismiss as a nobody becomes the somebody they can't afford to ignore. Anthony still works at Harrison Financial, though in a much smaller office. I hear he's actually had to start doing real work instead of just talking about it. Apparently, compliance issues are a lot harder to ignore when your cousin owns the compliance company. Success, I've learned, doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to brag at family dinners or demand attention at holiday gatherings. Real success builds quietly, steadily until one day you walk into a room and change everything just by being who you've become. The best revenge isn't destroying your critics. It's succeeding so completely that they're forced to admire what they once dismissed. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's watching their faces when they realize that the nobody they mocked now holds the power to approve or deny their dreams. I still remember the exact moment my family decided I was worthless. It wasn't a gradual realization or a slow descent into disappointment. No, it happened at precisely 7:43 p.m. on a Tuesday evening, all because of $800. I was sitting at my small desk in my childhood bedroom, counting the tips I'd earned from my waitressing shift. College textbooks were scattered around me, their price tags still visible, reminders of why my bank account was nearly empty 3 weeks into the semester. Madison. My father's voice boomed up the stairs. Get down here. Now. There was something in his tone that made my stomach clench. I'd heard him angry before, but this was different. This was the voice of a man whose pride was about to destroy everything. I found them in the living room, that perfect space my mother had decorated to look like a magazine spread. Crystal vases caught the evening light, casting prismatic shadows on the imported Italian marble floors. Everything in its place. Everything chosen to project success and wealth. Everything a lie. My father stood by the fireplace, a piece of paper crumpled in his fist. My mother perched on the edge of the sofa, her designer outfit at odds with the worry lines creasing her forehead. The bank called, my father said without preamble. They're threatening to repossess my car. Over $800. He spat the number like it was poison. $800 that I know you have. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? Don't play dumb. He thrust the paper at me, a bank notice threatening repossession. I saw you counting money just now. You've been working doubles at that diner for weeks. Hand it over. The truth stuck in my throat. Yes, I had money upstairs, exactly $783.42. Every dollar earned from endless hours of carrying plates and smiling through exhaustion. Money that was already spoken for. Dad, I can't. That's for my textbooks. I haven't even bought all of them yet. Textbooks. He barked out a laugh. You think your community college books are more important than my Mercedes? Than our family's reputation? My mother finally spoke, her voice soft but sharp. Madison, be reasonable. Your father needs this. It's just money, you can earn more. Just money. As if the hours of work, the aching feet, the missed sleep meant nothing. As if my education was worth less than their image. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. But I need these books. I can't pass my classes without them. My father's face turned an ugly shade of red. Can't, or won't. He stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. After everything we've given you, this is how you repay us? By being selfish. Given me? I wanted to laugh. They hadn't given me anything. Every dollar I had, I'd earned myself. While my friends' parents paid their college tuition, I was taking night classes because it was cheaper. While other students lived in dorms, I stayed home, not out of choice but because I couldn't afford to leave. I'm not being selfish, I said quietly. I'm trying to build a future. Future. My mother's laugh was brittle. At community college? taking business classes like you're going to be some big CEO someday. That hurt more than it should have. They'd never supported my dream of starting my own company, never believed I could be more than what they saw, a waitress taking cheap classes at night. The money is for my books, I repeated firmly. I'm sorry about the car, but get out. My father's roar made the crystal vases tremble. If you won't help this family, you're not part of it. Pack your things and get out of my house. I stared at him, waiting for the words to make sense. You're kicking me out? Over $800. Don't act surprised, my mother said, smoothing her silk blouse. You've always been difficult, ungrateful. Maybe sometime in the real world we'll teach you about family loyalty. Family loyalty. As if loyalty only worked one way. As if I hadn't spent years trying to earn their approval, their support, their love. Fine. The word came out calmer than I felt. I'll pack. You have 1 hour, my father snapped. And don't even think about taking anything we paid for. I wanted to point out that left very little: my clothes, my laptop bought with tip money, my secondhand textbooks. Everything else in my room had been carefully chosen by my mother to match her perfect house's aesthetic. Upstairs, I methodically packed my life into 2 duffel bags. Clothes from Target and thrift stores. My waitressing uniforms. The business books I'd already bought, their margins filled with dreams and plans my parents thought were worthless. My money went into my pocket. $783.42 that would now have to stretch further than I'd planned. As I zipped the last bag, my phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Sophie, heard yelling, "You okay?" I typed back quickly, "Need a place to crash. Just for a few days." Her response was immediate, "Guest room's yours. No time limit." Sophie's parents had always treated me like a second daughter. They weren't rich, her dad was a high school teacher, her mom ran a small bookstore, but they were kind. They understood the value of education, of dreams, of trying to build something more. I took one last look at my room. The pale blue walls my mother had insisted on. The matching curtains and bedspread. The desk where I'd studied late into the night, determined to prove I could be more than they thought I was. Downstairs, my parents waited by the door like security guards at a museum, making sure I didn't steal their precious possessions. "When you're ready to apologize and help your family," my father said stiffly, "you can come back." I shouldered my bags, looking him straight in the eye. "When I come back, it won't be asking for forgiveness." My mother's lips thinned. "And where exactly do you think you're going? What can you possibly do with your community college education?" I stepped out into the warm evening air, turning back one last time. "Watch me." They didn't try to stop me as I walked away from their perfect house with its marble floors and crystal vases. They didn't call out or come after me. They just closed the door, probably already thinking about how to explain my absence to their country club friends. Sophie was waiting on her front porch when I arrived, her parents beside her. They didn't ask questions, didn't judge. They just helped me carry my bags to their guest room, a small space with mismatched furniture and more warmth than my entire childhood home. "Stay as long as you need," Sophie's mom said, hugging me tight. "We believe in you." That night, I sat cross-legged on the guest room bed, my business textbooks spread around me. The $783.42 was carefully divided. $500 for the remaining textbooks I needed, $200 for emergency savings, $83.42 for absolute necessities. I opened my laptop, the one I'd bought with 3 months of tips, and pulled up the business plan I'd been working on. A real estate investment strategy I'd developed in my finance class, one my professor had called innovative and ambitious. My parents thought community college was worthless. They thought I couldn't be successful. Fine. I'd show them exactly what their difficult, ungrateful daughter could do. I worked late into the night refining my plan. The next morning, I picked up extra shifts at the diner, started looking for a second job. Every dollar would count now. Every hour would be an investment in my future. My parents' house, with its $1 million mortgage and desperate need to impress, had never felt like home. But someday I promised myself I would have a real home. One bought with my own money, built on my own success. And maybe, just maybe, it would be the very house they thought was too good for me. Little did they know, their perfect world was already starting to crumble. The $800 car payment was just the beginning. Their carefully constructed facade of wealth was built on debt and pride, and both were about to come crashing down. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that I had $783.42, a solid business plan and something my parents had never given me. People who believed in me. Sometimes being kicked out isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's exactly where the real story begins. 10 years can change everything. A decade after being thrown out over $800, I stood in front of my parents' house again, but this time as something they never expected: their mortgage holder. The years between had been a masterclass in determination. Living in Sophie's guest room, I worked 3 jobs. Waitressing during the day, bookkeeping for local businesses in the evenings, and weekends at a real estate office. Every spare moment went to my studies. My real estate professor, Dr. Martinez, became my mentor. He saw something in my investment strategy that others missed. "You understand what most people don't," he told me one day after class. "Real estate isn't just about buying properties. It's about seeing value where others see risk." He introduced me to Jennifer Chin, a former student who'd built a successful investment firm. She reviewed my business plan over coffee one morning. "This is ambitious," she said, reading through my analysis. "But your numbers are solid. Would you be interested in an internship?" That internship changed everything. Jennifer taught me the intricacies of real estate investment, the art of recognizing properties in trouble, and most importantly, how to turn those troubles into opportunities. By graduation, I had saved $50,000 from my various jobs. Jennifer matched it, becoming my first investor. "Consider it seed money," she said. "Show me what you can do." I started small, buying distressed properties, renovating them efficiently, and either selling for profit or maintaining them as rentals. Each success led to larger opportunities. Other investors noticed. My portfolio grew. 5 years after being kicked out, I founded Sterling Property Solutions. The name was my private joke, taking my father's precious family name and actually making something of it. Within 3 years, we were handling millions in real estate assets. I kept tabs on my parents through Sophie, who still lived in the old neighborhood. Their facade of wealth was cracking. The Mercedes got replaced with a more modest car. Country club memberships quietly lapsed. The perfect house began showing signs of neglect. Then came the day I'd been waiting for. Sophie called me at my office, now a sleek space overlooking downtown. "Madison, you need to see this." He sent me a link to a bank notice. My parents' house was going into foreclosure. They were underwater on the mortgage by nearly $1 million. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the framed dollar bill on my wall, my first profit from my first property flip. Next to it hung my community college diploma and a photo of Sophie's family at my graduation. "Find out who holds their mortgage," I told my assistant. The pieces fell into place perfectly. Their mortgage had been sold multiple times, finally landing with a bank eager to get the property off their books. Through a series of shell companies, I bought the debt for 60 cents on the dollar. Now, standing in front of the house 10 years later, I straightened my Armani suit and checked my watch. The foreclosure notice had been delivered yesterday. My parents had demanded a meeting with the bank's representative to plead their case. They had no idea that representative was me. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there, aged but still maintaining appearances. Her eyes widened slightly as she recognized me, then narrowed with calculated coldness. "Madison, what are you doing here?" "Hello, Mother. I believe you have a meeting scheduled about your mortgage." The color drained from her face. Behind her, I heard my father's voice. "Who is it, Diana?" "You might want to invite me in," I said quietly. "We have a lot to discuss." The house hadn't changed much. Same marble floors, though now they showed signs of wear. Same crystal vases, though a few were conspicuously missing, probably sold to maintain appearances. My father stood by his beloved fireplace just as he had the night he threw me out. But now his expensive suit looked worn at the edges, his posture less commanding. "What is this?" he demanded. "Where's the bank representative?" I pulled out my phone, bringing up the property documents. "You're looking at her. Or more accurately, you're looking at the owner of your mortgage." They stared at me, uncomprehending. I sat down on their perfect sofa, opened my briefcase and laid out the papers. "Sterling Property Solutions now holds your mortgage. My company." I let that sink in. "You're underwater by $975,000, 3 months behind on payments, and the property needs significant repairs. Your company? My mother's voice shook. That's impossible. You're a community college graduate? I finished for her. A waitress? The difficult, ungrateful daughter you threw out over $800. My father's face had turned that familiar shade of red. This is ridiculous. We don't believe you. I slid the documentation across their imported coffee table. Believe the paperwork then. Your house is now effectively mine. And unlike your previous lender, I'm not interested in restructuring the loan. You can't do this, my father exploded. We're your parents. Are we? My mother added, trying for emotional manipulation. After all we did for you? I laughed, the sound echoing off their marble floors. All you did for me? Let's review. You kicked me out over $800. You mocked my education. You called my dreams worthless. I stood up, enjoying the way they seemed to shrink in their expensive clothes. Now let me tell you what I did for myself. I pulled up Sterling Property Solutions on my phone. Our website, our portfolio, our success stories. 10 years. Over $100 million in real estate assets. Properties across 3 states. And yes, one particularly satisfying acquisition. This house. My mother had sunk into a chair, her perfect posture crumbling. Why would you do this? Because you taught me an invaluable lesson that night you threw me out. I walked to the fireplace, running my finger along the dusty mantle. You taught me that true worth isn't in appearances. It's not in fancy cars or marble floors or crystal vases. I turned back to them. It's in seeing value where others don't. In working harder than anyone expects you to. In believing in yourself when no one else will. What do you want? My father asked. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for the past 3 years, I've been secretly paying my parents' mortgage, their car loans, and even their credit card debt. Not because I had to, but because despite everything, they were still my parents. That was until last week when they called me ungrateful. The final word that made me realize just how blind I'd been. I grew up in a middle-class family in suburban Chicago. My parents, David and Marie Mitchell, weren't wealthy, but we had enough. That changed when I was 16 and my father lost his job at a major manufacturing company. The comfortable life we knew started crumbling, piece by piece. While my parents desperately tried to maintain appearances, taking out loans they couldn't afford and refinancing the house multiple times, I worked. Every day after school, weekends, summers, I did whatever I could to help. My younger brother Kevin just shrugged it off, saying it wasn't his problem. He was the golden child, the one they were protecting from stress. I put myself through college, working 2 jobs while studying finance. My parents never came to my graduation. Kevin had a football game that day. When I landed my first job at an investment firm, they barely noticed. At least you're making something of yourself, my mother said, more focused on Kevin's college applications. But I didn't stop there. While everyone thought I was just another junior analyst, I was learning everything I could about the mortgage industry, about how banks worked, about the system that had trapped my parents in a cycle of debt. By 25, I had started my own financial consulting firm. By 28, I had acquired several small lending companies. No one in my family knew about my success. They still saw me as the same struggling Sarah, living in a modest apartment, driving a used car. What they didn't know was that I owned the building I lived in, and that used car was a choice, not a necessity. When I discovered my parents were 3 months behind on their mortgage payments, I quietly bought their debt through one of my companies. I started paying everything, $90,000 in total over 3 years. I made sure they never knew it was me. I thought I was helping them, protecting them from their own financial mistakes. Last week I went to their house for dinner. Kevin was there, showing off his new luxury car, bought with money our parents had borrowed against their house. Sarah, my mother said, eyeing my simple clothes, you could try a little harder, you know. Look at Kevin, he's doing so well. I couldn't hold back anymore. Mom, do you know how much debt you're in? The new loan for Kevin's car. That's none of your business, my father snapped. We support your brother because he deserves it. He has ambition. I've been helping you, I said quietly. For years I've been helping, my mother laughed. What? Your little consulting job? Don't be ridiculous. Kevin smirked from the couch. Yes, sis. Some help you've been. Mom and Dad had to refinance the house again because you never chip in. That's when I finally told them. I've been paying your mortgage, your cars, your credit cards, everything. The room went silent. Then my father exploded. You're so ungrateful, he screamed. After everything we've done for you, you have the audacity to lie about helping us? Get out. Get out. My mother was crying not because she felt bad for me, but because I had embarrassed them in front of Kevin. My brother just sat there, that smug smile still on his face. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking not from fear but from anger. Okay, I said calmly. You're right. I am ungrateful. And you know what? I'm done. As I walked to my car, I could hear them still yelling about how I was trying to make them look bad, how I was jealous of Kevin's success. They had no idea what was coming. That night, I made a call to my office. Susan, I told my assistant, cancel all payments on the Mitchell accounts. All of them. And prepare the foreclosure paperwork. It's time they learned where their money really comes from. 1 month. That's all it would take. 1 month before they realized that their ungrateful daughter wasn't just their daughter. She was their banker, their creditor, and soon their worst nightmare. The first sign that something was wrong came exactly 1 week after our fight. I was sitting in my real office, not the small consulting room my family thought I worked from, but the penthouse suite of the Mitchell Financial Group's headquarters. The name wasn't a coincidence. I'd chosen it as a private joke, a reminder of where I came from. Ms. Mitchell, Susan appeared at my door. Your brother is trying to use his credit card at Carson Luxury Motors. It's been declined. I smiled, remembering Kevin's smug face. Let me guess, he's trying to put a down payment on another car? Yes, ma'am. Should I authorize it? No, I said firmly. Let it fail. It's time for some reality checks. The calls started that evening. First from Kevin, then my mother, finally my father. I let them all go to voicemail, each message more desperate than the last. Sarah, something's wrong with my cards. I know you're just a consultant, but maybe you could look into it. Honey, we're having some trouble with the bank. Could you help us figure it out? Sarah, this is your father. Call us back immediately. All our accounts are frozen. I listened to each message, remembering every time they dismissed my achievements, every family dinner where they praised Kevin while ignoring my success. The company I'd built now managed over $2 billion in assets, but to them I was still just their struggling daughter who needed to try harder. 2 weeks after I canceled the payments, the first official notice arrived at their house. I had made sure it was sent in a bright red envelope, impossible to ignore. Inside was a formal letter from Mitchell Financial Group, outlining their payment delinquencies and the impending foreclosure. My mother called me in tears. Sarah, please, we need help. We got this terrible letter. We might lose the house. What letter? I kept my voice neutral. From some company, Mitchell Financial. They say we haven't made payments, but that's impossible. We've been getting mysterious help for years. We thought maybe it was one of Dad's old work friends. I almost laughed at the irony. Send me a picture of the letter, I said. I'll take a look. Minutes later my phone buzzed. There it was, My signature at the bottom of the letter, clear as day. President and CEO Sarah Mitchell, Mitchell Financial Group. Did you look at it? I asked. Yes, but I don't understand all these terms. The CEO's name is the same as yours. Isn't that funny? Maybe you could talk to them since you share a name. Mom, I said slowly, look at the signature again. Really look at it. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. This can't be right. This signature. It looks like mine. I finished for her. That's because it is mine. Mitchell Financial Group is my company, Mom. I own it. I've owned it for years. All those mysterious payments, the help you never questioned, that was me. The phone went silent for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then I heard her calling for my father, her voice shaking. David, come here right now. I put the phone on speaker and waited. I could hear papers rustling, my father's heavy footsteps. Sarah. His voice was different now, uncertain, almost afraid. What is this? What have you done? Nothing yet, I replied calmly. I've simply stopped doing what I've been doing for the past 3 years, paying your bills, covering your debts, keeping you afloat while you gave everything to Kevin. But you're just a consultant, he stammered. No, Dad. I'm the CEO of one of the largest financial groups in the Midwest. I own the company that holds your mortgage, your car loans, your credit cards. Every payment you thought was a miracle, that was me. Why? My mother's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? When have you ever believed in me? I could hear the bitterness in my voice. I told you I was helping and you threw me out. Called me ungrateful. Well, now you can be grateful to the bank instead. That's when Kevin's voice joined the conversation. This is bullshit. You're lying. There's no way you own a company like that. Kevin, I said sweetly, how do you think you qualified for all those car loans with your terrible credit score? Check your loan documents. Who's the lender? Mitchell Financial Group. My company. You can't do this to us. My father's voice had turned angry. We're your family. Family. I laughed. Was I family when you missed my graduation? When you remortgaged the house to buy Kevin a car but told me you couldn't help with my student loans? When you called me ungrateful after I spent years secretly supporting you? We didn't know. My mother whispered. Exactly. You never bothered to know anything about me. Well, now you know. You have 30 days to make all pending payments. That's $127,000 total. Otherwise, foreclosure proceedings will begin. We don't have that kind of money. Kevin shouted. Not my problem anymore. Maybe sell some of those cars I helped you buy. I paused, letting that sink in. Oh, and Kevin, the lease on your apartment? I own that building too. You should check your mail. Your rent is going up. Way up. I could hear them all talking at once now. My mother crying, my father swearing, Kevin threatening legal action. I let them go on for a moment before speaking again. I have a board meeting to attend. Unlike some people in this family, I actually work for my money. Good luck with the payments. I hung up, but my phone immediately started ringing again. Text messages poured in. Mom, please honey, we can talk about this. Dad, you can't do this to your own family. Kevin, you'll regret this, Sarah. Just wait. I forwarded them all to my legal team, then turned back to my work. On my desk was a photo I'd kept hidden for years, my college graduation. I'm alone in the picture, no family around me, but I'm smiling. That was the day I promised myself I'd never need anyone's approval again. Susan appeared at my door again. Your mother's in the lobby, Ms. Mitchell. She's causing quite a scene. I stood up, straightening my suit. Have security escort her to conference room 3. It's time she saw exactly who her ungrateful daughter has become. The walk to the conference room felt like a victory lap. Through the glass walls, I could see my mother's eyes widening as she took in my designer suit, the way every employee nodded respectfully as I passed. Gone was the simple outfit I wore to family dinners, the careful disguise of mediocrity. "Mom," I said as I entered, "welcome to my little consulting business." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. In a way she was. "So, all this, how?" "Hard work," I replied. "Something you and Dad always said I never did enough of, remember? While you were focused on Kevin's football games, I was building this. While you were remortgaging the house to buy him cars, I was acquiring companies. Every time you told me I needed to try harder, I was already running a multi-billion-dollar corporation." "We didn't know," she whispered again. "You never asked." I sat down across from her. "You never cared enough to ask. But why hide it? Why let us think?" "Because I wanted to see if you would ever be proud of me just for being me. Not for money, not for success, just for who I am." I met her eyes. "You failed that test spectacularly." She started crying again, but I'd grown immune to her tears. What can we do? Your father and I, we can't lose the house." "You have options," I said professionally. "You can pay what you owe or you can face foreclosure. The same options any other client would have. We're not just any other client. We're your parents." "No," I stood up. "You're people who happened to raise me, who never believed in me, who called me ungrateful after I spent years helping you. Now you get to experience what being ungrateful really means." As security escorted her out, I heard her last desperate plea. "We're sorry, Sarah. We didn't know." But that was the problem. They should have known. They should have seen me, believed in me, supported me. Instead, they'd chosen Kevin, chosen appearances, chosen willful ignorance. Over the next few weeks, my family tried everything. They begged, threatened, attempted to guilt-trip me through relatives. Kevin even tried to get a lawyer involved, until he discovered that Mitchell Financial Group had connections to every major law firm in the city. My father showed up at my office once, demanding to speak to the board about my unfair treatment of family. He left quickly when he realized I was the majority shareholder. There would be no appealing to a higher power. I was the higher power. In the end, they had to sell most of their assets to keep the house. Kevin's cars, my mother's jewelry, my father's prized collectibles, all gone. They downsized, moved to a smaller place, and for the first time in their lives had to live within their means. Some might call it revenge, but I saw it as a necessary lesson. Sometimes people only understand their mistakes when they face real consequences. A year later, I received an invitation to a family dinner. I almost threw it away, but something made me open it. Inside was a handwritten note from my mother. "We were wrong. About everything. Not just about your success, but about who you are. We don't deserve forgiveness, but we'd like a chance to truly know our daughter. Not the person we thought you were, but the amazing woman you've become. I haven't decided if I'll go yet. Part of me wants to, not to forgive necessarily, but to finally be seen for who I am. Another part remembers years of dismissal, of being the family afterthought, of never being good enough. But one thing's certain, they'll never call me ungrateful again. Because now they know that their comfortable life had always depended on the daughter they never bothered to really know."